let's get into Sheffield Wednesday because we haven't had a chance to talk about this on the channel because it was the latest episode of Mr Chansiri and Sheffield Wednesday this past week with another EFL charge for them to respond to. And before we talk about the specific charge and the question, I will just say I'm completely with Mr Chansiri. You're almost lost and a bit numb to it. God knows how the Wednesday fans feel because over the years there's just been so many things, one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. Genuinely, let me know if you agree, Wednesday fans. I'm to the point of, more news from Sheffield Wednesday. Okay, I'll stick that on the pile of other ridiculous news from Mr Chansiri and Sheffield Wednesday. But look, let's read the question, and then I've got the statement, I've got the response, all of that. Starman NWC, given the late payment of wages for a second time in 3 months, and turning down reportedly the largest offer for a non-parachute payment team ever. So he says in excess of the West Brom purchase, which was in the middle of last season, or at the start of last season, wasn't it? What do you see as a future for Sheffield Wednesday? Administration, more years of woe under Chansiri, or is his position now completely untenable? I'll circle back to the question. We'll have a bit of a chat generally about Wednesday. So I've got the EFL statement here. Sheffield Wednesday, this was 4th of June, so middle of last week, basically. Sheffield Wednesday has been charged with multiple breaches of EFL regulations related to payment obligations. This is not the first time, by the way. The owner of Sheffield Wednesday, Mr Chansiri, has also, so he's been charged specifically, also been charged with causing the club to be in breach of EFL regulations despite his commitment to fund the cash requirements of the club. When they say commitment to fund the cash requirements of the club, they're very close with Mr Chansiri. This will be an obligation he'll have made under a business plan from a previous charge to say, right, you've agreed to do this and front this up. So that, I guess, is his specific charge there. All charges relate to to both the ultimate beneficial owner, that's in caps as well, so that's obviously a legal term, and the club failing to meet their obligations to pay players' wages on time and in full in March and May 2025. The club had 14 days to respond. I think I've got the response here. Wednesday said, on the club website, the club continued to seek, so this is basically Mr Chansiri speaking, a resolution regarding outstanding salaries due for the month of May at the earliest possible opportunity. Mr Chansiri sincerely apologises to all players, coaches and staff affected and everyone connected with the club. March's wages were eventually paid in April. There was a temporary issue due to debts owed to Chansiri, whose family control the Thai Union Group, the world's largest producer of canned tuna. I don't know why that's funny, or just canned tuna into the story here. That's just modern football, isn't it? The world's largest producer of canned tuna. Look, let's get into a bit of detail about this. And the question here, that last bit, is his position now completely untenable? Well, it's never going to be completely untenable because he's the owner. It's only the EFL or, him eventually being kicked out. We did see Mr. Dai Young at Reading. He basically has finally been kicked out, hasn't he? Put so much pressure on him. The problem is you don't want to get the wrong guy if you're the EFL. It's a bit of a tightrope and really go all or nothing because they could fold the football club. I know people say they'll never let that happen, but if you just get the wrong guy who really is obstinate about it, you don't want to tempt them into, and Sheffield Wednesday is a great football club with a massive history, and, that would not be a good thing for the game to see owners coming in, trying, failing, use whatever terms you want on Mr Chansiri's, kind of legacy and work he's done there at Wednesday, and then folding. That would not work. But is it untenable for the EFL? Well, it always seems to be that he gets himself into a scrape, and in the end he gets himself out of the scrape, doesn't it? So, just on Mr Chansiri, there's this, I suppose the timeline, I can't remember all of the scrapes he's got himself into. But the kind of abridged version is he came in with them in the second tier. I'm pretty sure they were in the second tier when he became in charge. But what I do know is he spent big. I remember like 5 million on Gary Hooper, and Forestieri was loads, and Jordan Rhodes was a massive, he was like the championship Harry Kane, I guess, at that point. And they went the big deal on the big striker who's going to get you into the Premier League. And, they got all the way to the playoff final, didn't they? I don't know. Maybe they didn't have Rhodes at the point where they were in the playoff final. Maybe that was the season. Wednesday fans will correct the timeline. But the general feeling is he spent a ton of money, got to that playoff final against Hull, lost. And look, maybe it would have been as ridiculous if they'd have got promoted. But there is this idea that I can't get away from, that if they'd have won that playoff final, could everything have been so different? Then you're, to use a Mick McCarthy term, you're inside the tent peeing out then, rather than outside the tent peeing in. It's a Mick McCarthyism, sorry if it's coarse, but in terms of being in that top 23 now, which is horrible and ridiculous, but you either want to be receiving Premier League TV money or parachute money, and then you're so far ahead of the rest of the EFL, even if the worst happens, you just bounce between the two leagues, and you're certainly at a massive advantage in the EFL, not the massive disadvantage that Wednesday found themselves in, because obviously the spending then resulted in them being the wrong side of PSR. We had the odd, I was going to say ridiculous, it was ridiculous, stadium sale. Which year of the accounts does it go in? Did it go in the wrong year? And then they breach and they get the minus points, don't they? And they're relegated with a points deduction, and they go into League One, and then they miss out, and then they get promoted from League One after the most ridiculous playoff semi-final you'll ever see, being 4 down to Peterborough from the first leg. And then before they've even kicked the ball, he falls out with Darren Moore, and then Cisco comes in, and that's terrible. And there's more stuff in the background about payments and whatnot. And then here comes Danny Rohl and kind of saves Mr Chansiri's bacon, doesn't he, with a really good managerial performance last season. And it feels like Danny Rohl is still doing a good job, but under duress and mitigating circumstances here, he's got his hands tied a little bit. And you just wonder, have Wednesday got exactly the right manager, but working in the wrong circumstances? I know there's another question about Danny Rohl coming, so I'll keep my powder dry and answer that in a minute. They just might have exactly the right guy, and if he just had better circumstances, he could get them into the Premier League. You just never know. So what about the future there? Starman is asking and turning down offers. I don't know what his end game is, Chansiri. Does he think he can get a really good price and a really good sale, mitigate his losses and get out? Or does he still think he can get Wednesday into the Premier League if he plays this game for another 5 years, for another 10 years? And I always remember Mick Mills talking about Ipswich, my team, and Marcus Evans, who was a hapless owner, not quite on Mr Chansiri's level. There were never any points deductions. And I tell you, how Marcus Evans exited Ipswich is exactly probably what they want what the Wednesday fans want Mr Chansiri to do. Marcus Evans scratched a lot of the debts, sold to a really good owner, got out, and then, it got promoted twice straight after, which is probably annoying for Marcus Evans, but I'm sure he had stuff tied into the deal. But that's what Wednesday would want, pass it on to somebody and don't saddle them with, Remember Sunderland, where it was very much Ellis Short wanted to get out, and his way out was, well, I'll pass it on, but I'm taking all the parachute payments, which then meant Sunderland were definitely going to get relegated and had horrible obligations to sort out. And he also gave it to those, that kind of buffoonery ownership where we saw on Sunderland Till I Die. So that's kind of what you really don't want. I don't know. It is almost better that he stays around than he does a silly sale that means Wednesday are going to go back into League One and take more years to build up. I'm sure there's Wednesday fans in the comments will say, Ben, I'll take it. Give me League One and a new owner and a fresh paint of coat straight away. I said fresh paint of coat deliberately there before someone thinks I can't speak. They would take that as the solution. So I don't No, I genuinely don't know what his end game is. Look, people are always going to hold out in a negotiation for the most money possible, but there is a point where I can understand the frustration of the Wednesday fans of, look, you're not going to get a better offer than that, are you? But maybe he just looks at particularly American money and as well, look at what's happening at Birmingham. Is there not a similar opportunity in a big city and a great storied football history? The city there of Sheffield with two great clubs in there. And can you take Wednesday if you're an American hedge fund or whoever like Knighthead are at Birmingham, or even what's happened at my lot, Ipswich, where you get it's a pension fund, isn't it? But they've got more money than God. And, you know, they want their Premier League football team and they want that lovely TV rights deal money each and every year, you know, going onto their accounts. That's the truth of it. In terms of like administration, I guess, I mean, but why would you put it into administration and kind of keep it rather than just take the deal? I don't really see how, because you put it into administration, you're pretty much guaranteeing relegation, aren't you? Because you immediately get minus 12 points if your club goes into administration, and then the administrators, they're not going to let you sign anybody because they're going to watch all the payments. That's literally their job. It's not their fault. They're going to sell any asset you've got. So immediately, you'd assume the manager would leave, and you pretty much guaranteed relegation. If a team goes into administration and doesn't get relegated, they're, you know, maybe a parachute team could do it because they'd have a bigger asset base and, you know, could get away with it. But to get past the kind of minus 12 would be really, really difficult, especially if you're in Wednesday's position when there's this idea that Danny Rohl is propping it up anyway, and there's a little bit of overperformance compared to what's actually been invested in the team and the level of player there. So, it's not good. I don't know what the end point is. I'm sure the Wednesday fans are going to say, I don't care what the end point is as long as it doesn't involve Mr Chansiri. And let's be honest, he's not going to get them to the Premier League, is he? It's not going to happen, is it? Not under his watch. I just feel there's too many ships have sailed, too much water going under too many bridges, to use whatever cracking football metaphor you want to. Just quickly, I know there's this next question I'd set up there from Richard as well. As well thought of as Danny Rohl is. His question's fine there. I just couldn't read it. Can you see any Championship club meeting the reported £5 million release clause in his contract? That's a great question because that's a lot of money. And does that mean you can immediately rule out any team that's not getting parachute payments? It probably does. I know people will argue, and the great Bobby Robson, you know, used to say this, that the manager should be the best paid person at the club, shouldn't they? They should be the number one guy. They're running everything, but we know players get more money than managers do, which is odd, but that's football. Well, look, would a non-parachute team pay £5 million for a player? Well, no, actually, Hull would, Middlesbrough would, Norwich would. So, look, maybe they could. And would Leicester? Well, Leicester might struggle because we think Leicester are going to have a knock on the door from the EFL. And if they go under an approved business plan, I don't see them getting through. Okay, EFL, we want to pay £5 million to get a manager, and we want to sack this manager, which is going to cost us, you know, whatever compensation they've got written in with Ruud van Nistelrooy. Ruud van Nistelrooy. It's early, guys. So I don't see that getting through an approved business plan if indeed Leicester go on one, which we expect they might. Southampton aren't going to take him. Here's an interesting one. Would Ipswich? I think they possibly would, wouldn't they? If, as we're expecting, we're going to have a nice summer of Ange Postecoglou out to Tottenham, Thomas Frank from Brentford to Tottenham, which opens up the Brentford job, and you would think, well, either Danny Rohl himself, Brentford had definitely spent £5 million, or Kieran McKenna to Brentford, Danny Rohl to Ipswich, that sort of thing. So, yes, I can see a handful of Championship clubs meeting the reported clause. Look, we'll put that out as an individual clip. What are you thinking on the latest of Sheffield Wednesday? What is the end game for Mr Chansiri? Will they ever get away from this purgatory with him? How does this thing end? Let me know in the comments.